Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, Teresa's Crafty Cabana. Today I'm going to be showing you a comparison of using the Play-Doh, which I've used in the past, and this is new to me, is a stamping foam from Simon Hurley Ranger. And you can see I already tested it out with an embossing folder here and I flattened it. On this side I haven't done anything to. The set that I got came with 2 of the stamping foams. So I haven't done anything to this one yet, but if you're not sure what these are, basically heat them up with your heat tool, your embossing heat tool, and once it's hot, you press it into a texture, it holds that texture, and then you can use that to stamp with, jelly print with, whatever you like. So I'm going to see how the impression on this stamping foam compares to impressions on the modeling dough or Play-Doh on a jelly plate. So let's get started. So I'll start by rolling out my Play-Doh. I've got this acrylic rolling pin type thing that's used for polymer clay. And this is moving around. I'm just going to do it on a glass mat. And so what I want to do is just get this flat. So it's like a sheet, but not too thin that I can see through it. So I'll just kind of roll this out until it feels like it's the right size or right depth. So it's starting to fall apart. So I'm going to use one of my scraper blades so that I can get some clean pickup from my Play-Doh. Okay, so this is just a flat blade. I'm just going to do a little bit thinner. So I'm going to start by using this texture just from an embossing folder. This is a 3D embossing folder from Sizzix. I think I'll start with this side here. So the one that has the picture on it. I'm just going to take my Play-Doh. I think I want this smoother side actually, like that. And I'll just press it in with my rolling pin. Okay, so that is a nice amount of impression. You can see it's got nice grooves. So I'm going to set that aside. And next I'm going to heat up my foam block and press that in and do the same thing. So I'll come back when this is heated and I'm ready to press it in. Okay, so now I've heated up my foam and I'm pressing that into my impression plate here. And now you can see this one also has the impression left behind. So I'm going to let that one cool and I'll pull out my jelly plate and I'll do some tests with these. Alright, so I've got my jelly plate. I'm just going to use some golden paints here. Azo Gold and the Titanium White. Alright, so I'll start with my Play-Doh. The nice thing about the Play-Doh is it has organic shaped edges. So when I do this on a piece of, say, paper cardstock, it's usually like a straight edge like this. And then this way you can kind of get it right next to each other without it looking too unusual. So there's that. I pressed harder up here. I was pressing really light here. So it made a little bit of a different texture depending on how hard you press. All right, so this is dry. I'm gonna put a layer of some of my gold. All right, so I'm ready to pull this print and see how this design transferred. So that did a really good job. You can see where I pressed a little bit lighter here. It has a nice fine impression. And then when I pressed heavier, it obviously took away more of the orange paint. So I think that that's a really nice texture using the Play-Doh. And then next we'll test out. So this one, the details on this one are not quite as sharp. So that's why I'm curious to see how that's going to look on the Gelli plate. All right, so I've got my turquoise and my phthalo blue red shade. And I put a drop of white on top, and I'll just blend those together in the middle. I like to add the white in these because they're very transparent paints, and if I don't add the white, you don't really see the layers, but they kind of go over each other. So it's just a matter of if you want opaque or if you want transparent. So now I will use this. I think for this one I'll do two, but I'll do them this way. I'm not going to press too hard, just to get a feel for it. Okay, now this one does leave that line right here, but that's kind of what you're going to get when you have a solid line on anything. So let's let that dry and see what that looks like when it's pulled up. I did want to mention that when you're working with acrylics, you do want to rinse this. You could either have a bath of water and soap. I'm using a baby wipe right now, but you want to catch it while this paint is wet, or else it's going to kind of stay on your foam. So I'll just clean that all the way until as much of that paint is off of here. So now that this layer is dry, I'll put in a layer of gold on top of this one too. All right, so we'll pull that print. So again, the only thing with the foam is you have this line. So I guess what I could do is do it just in the center like that, where it takes up a lot of the gel plate. So that's how you can maybe avoid getting that line down the middle. Let's just look at it compared to the detail in the Play-Doh. So you can see you get much cleaner, thinner lines on the Play-Doh. These are much thicker lines. So one last test is I will see what it looks like when I do it with just paper or cardstock. All right, so for this next layer, I'll use my orange and kind of like this reddish orange color. Okay, and now using the embossed cardstock. So I'll just show you the benefit to using the cardstock. I'm using the same side like that, but then I can flip it and get the opposite, like that. And we'll let that dry, and then I'll show you all three prints together to see what the differences are. Alright, so let's do the same thing with the gold on top. And let's see what this one looks like. I like the colors on this one. Okay, so let's see. This is paper where you can use both sides of it. It didn't pull up completely over here, but I think because I already had paint on mine, so if you used a fresh, clean paper, I think it would pull up all of that. And then this is using the stamping foam. Still, it's wide like this, only the opposite of this. And then this one using the Play-Doh, which is very similar to what you get on the cardstock. Again, cardstock can leave the line like this. The Play-Doh did not leave the lines. So let's talk pros and cons of each. We'll start with the Play-Doh. Pros: Play-Doh's cheap. You can get paint on it, and you can leave the paint on it and just reuse it. Or if you want a new design, you just mix it up and roll it out, and you have a new design. The edges are not straight. You can make them straight by cutting them with a sharp knife or a blade or something, but I like the organic look to this. It just flows better on the paper. And then last, I would say the benefit to the Play-Doh is you can put it on all kinds of surfaces. So shaped surfaces that are round, bumpy, not flat, and you can pull the texture. So benefits. Next, we'll talk about the stamping foam. Stamping foam didn't have the very clear, fine texture that the Play-Doh had. It's a lot, I guess, thicker. And again, you get that line down the center here. If I did it just in the center like this, I would have still had the line around the little block here. So benefits to it, you can kind of similarly to the Play-Doh, you can take textures from different things, but I would think generally with this one you have to use a flatter surface, maybe a little bit of a roundedness to it. Once it's heated, you can probably press it into like a little bit of a rounded surface like a basket, but it would be difficult to do it like around maybe a candle. I don't know. It just seems like it isn't as versatile for that. And then the other thing is it doesn't hold as crisp the design as the Play-Doh. And then lastly, because this is something you're going to be heating up and reusing for different designs, you do have to clean the paint off of this one right away. So if you use the acrylic paints, you have to clean it off. If you're using dye inks or oxide inks, you can leave those on and wash it off at the end because they're water-based. That's fine, but any acrylic paints that will dry on here, you will want to make sure you wipe those off as you're going each time you use it. And then lastly is the paper. So paper's been the one that I've been using the most. Pros and cons. Pros, it's paper, it's thin, it doesn't take up a lot of room. It can take a nice design on both sides, so you get a variety of the texture. You can use it over and over, but as you can see from this one, after time, when the paint builds up, it just doesn't take as clear of an impression anymore. So I'd say that these have a lifespan on them, but again, once you've realized it's not pulling a crisp print anymore, then you can just do another piece of paper. Problem is you're going to be using a lot more supplies when you have to keep remaking these. So for Play-Doh, if the crispness was going away, I would just ball it up, roll it out, press it down again, and there we go. It'd be ready to go. So this also, because you can get multiple textures out of this one thing, it stores in its little container, and that's all you're storing. If you were to emboss a bunch of these textures on cardstock, you have to store each of them or use them, but it does build up once you got a nice pile of them. And the stamping foam, obviously, that's a little bit bigger footprint than the Play-Doh. So which one's my favorite? I don't know if you can tell, but I think my favorite out of all of them actually is the Play-Doh, only because it's the most versatile. It's very pliable. You don't have to clean it. When I'm ready to put it away, I just roll it up and store it. When I want a new texture, I can put it on anything, and then I get this organic edge to it, and I love that. So I'm going to do a little play session, just play some music, and I'm going to use all three of my textures, some paper, some Play-Doh, and some of my stamping foam, but kind of combine them, and I'm going to use different textures. So I'll probably pop in and let you know what textures I'm doing, and then I'll just do some playtime. Okay, for the stamping foam, I heated this side and pressed it into just a plastic basket that I have. And then on the bottom side, I heated it and used a stamp. I pressed it down here, heated this again, pressed it up here. And then there was a little crease, so I heated it to get rid of the crease. And then I thought I would add a little detail just right along the edge here with this little tool. Don't know if this will work. I don't know if I have to hold it. Okay, that doesn't seem to be working. Okay, well, I tried. Anyway, I'll just see what the prints look like with these very light textures. Maybe it'll look cool. So I guess the benefit on the stamping foam is you can use a couple of different variations. Pro, the con, every time you heat it, it softens anything around that heat. So it's hard to, I don't know, really work with. Also, the heating part does take a little while. So I think there's a better, if you have one thing in mind for this and you kind of leave it at that, that might be a better use for it. Again, with the Play-Doh, so I did press this into a little container that I had, and it had these little dots all over it. So I'm going to see what that looks like. And for my paper one, I'll use this alphabet one. It does have paint all over it, you can see, but we'll see what I get by kind of combining these. Alright, to mix things up, I am going to use this dragonfly glaze. And I'll let that layer dry, and then I'll come in with my phthalo blue. Oh, that looks so cool. This is almost like a, because of that, or the red is like a tomato red. It almost looks like orange. It really pops against that blue. I love how that turned out. Kind of looks like paint spatter or something. This is more of like a purple mixed with that blue. I just love this. So cool. And you can see all the different textures. I did use, remember that glaze? And you can see it right on the layer of the blue. Just a little bit. It's easier to see in person. But yeah, that does look really pretty. So cool. Okay, I'm going to do one more. And again, just kind of playing around with my textures. And then that will finish off this video. So this is turquoise, and this is phthalo green blue shade. To mix things up just a little bit, I have this stencil. I just used die cuts to cut out stars. I'm just going to put that down and use my Play-Doh. Yeah, that looks cool. And maybe a little bit over here. I did clean my stamping foam. Let's try this basket weave. See if I can pick that design up. A little bit. And for the paper one, I'll just press over here. Alright, so I did re-texturize this stamping foam. This is actually from my Spellbinders mat. Didn't want to get it dirty on here, so I thought I'd emboss or put it onto this stamping foam and see how that looks. I want to do kind of a yellow, maybe like a yellow and an orange. I'll do the orange over on the turquoise side and the yellow over on the green side. And I will go back in with my textures. Don't want to remove the stars at all possible, just the wet paint kind of around the stars. I like what's happening here, so I don't want to mess that up. Maybe I'll go over here. I got a harsh line. Let's see if I can use my card here. A little bit, and maybe right here. I'll also do which letter? Maybe like this one. and we'll let that dry. So I will do a layer of gold right here. But I want to pull a little more of this texture out. So it's getting very saturated now. And each pass, it's not removing as much. So I think at this point, it would be time for me to bundle it back up and roll it back out and redo my texture. Alright, so I added in some phthalo blue red shade and some quinacridone magenta, a little bit of white. Okay, this looks really cool too. This has a lot of layers. Remember, I had the green and turquoise in the beginning with the stars. Then it had the yellow and the orange, and then the gold, and then the purple kind of coloring in the very, very back. So that just looks so cool. I love it. And you can see the gold details. They pop against the, they're not matte paints, they are shiny, but the gold definitely has a lot more shine. You can see the different textures. Got the alphabet, of course the really cool Play-Doh design. This is from the stamping foam, and a little bit of stamping foam here. So I think that is really cool to combine them and come up with some different uses of between using stencils and some different textures to create such an interesting looking print. So what do you think? Did you enjoy that process? Did you enjoy the comparison? And how would you use these different textures? Or which would you be drawn to use more often? Like I said, I think I really like the Play-Doh, the organic lines in this. The only thing I will say is if you leave it out all day, which I've left mine out pretty much the whole day, it does start to dry and crack. I got a Play-Doh pack from Dollar Tree and it had, I think, maybe 8 different little containers. So once I feel like this kind of is too dry and cracking, I'll probably just throw it away and use a different one. So again, just something to think about, but I think it does have such a cool look to it. So these complete out the prints for this session. Hope you enjoyed watching this comparison, and I hope you follow along for the next video. And in the meantime, happy crafting, y'all!